The alien warlords of the Dominion had ruled the Orion Corridor for centuries. Their fleets were symbols of unchallenged authority, their conquests spoken of with reverence and fear. They had faced empires older than human civilization and ground them to dust. To them, humanity was nothing more than an ambitious newcomer, technologically curious but militarily insignificant. The first contact was not one of open hostility, but of calculated intimidation. A small human convoy, escorting diplomatic envoys through a neutral trade lane, became the perfect stage for a public demonstration of Dominion dominance. They shadowed the human ships for hours, letting their massive silhouettes blot out the stars. No warning shots. No demands. Just a slow, suffocating display of superiority. Then, without provocation, a barrage of disabling fire tore through the escort's shielding. Engines died, weapons went offline, and one by one the human ships drifted powerless in the void. Dominion Marines boarded the lead vessel and dragged its crew out into the cold glare of a broadcast drone. The transmission went live across dozens of worlds. The captured humans, bound and bloodied, were presented like trophies while a Dominion commander declared their fleet a fragile attempt at playing war. He spoke in the patronizing tone of a predator humoring its prey, promising to return the prisoners once humanity acknowledged its place in the galactic order. Laughter echoed in the Dominion Council chambers when the footage replayed. To them, this was another forgettable lesson for a primitive species. The galaxy watched for humanity's reaction. Weeks passed. No counterstrike. No public outcry. No declarations. Trade continued. Human diplomats made no fiery speeches in the Galactic Assembly, no military fleets appeared at the edges of Dominion space. This silence was interpreted as submission. To the Dominion, it confirmed everything they believed, that humans, despite their noisy ambitions, would bow when confronted with true power. But within the human defense network, that silence was not born of fear. It was the quiet of minds already moving pieces into place. The Office of Strategic Warfare began operating on encrypted channels known only to a handful of people. Orders were issued to reroute patrols, pull ships from visible trade lanes, and begin war simulations around the Dominion's known patrol patterns. Still, to the casual observer, humanity remained motionless. Even some galactic analysts began speculating that humans might seek appeasement through negotiation. The Dominion's propaganda machine worked overtime, replaying the footage of the captured convoy, using it to warn other frontier civilizations about resisting their authority. The humiliation was public, but the Dominion failed to understand the kind of species they were dealing with. Among the Dominion senior officers was an old veteran who had fought in the wars of consolidation. He had seen species rise from weakness to lethal strength when pushed into survival mode. Watching the humans' uncharacteristic quiet unsettled him. In the briefing halls, he voiced concerns, reminding others that predators do not smile when cornered prey does not run. His warnings were dismissed with ridicule. The humans, they insisted, were traders, explorers, and talkers, not warriors. Even the prisoners remained calm in their cells. Dominion interrogators expected rage or begging. Instead, they were met with steady, measured eyes that revealed nothing. A subtle message was being communicated without words: the game was not over. The Dominion just didn't know the rules humanity played by. The spark had been lit, though the Dominion mistook it for a dying ember. The old officer's unease grew when reports arrived of minor disruptions along their supply lanes, insignificant incidents easily blamed on pirates. But in his gut, he recognized the pattern of deliberate probing. He had seen such beginnings before, when seemingly harmless acts spiraled into wars that ground entire civilizations into dust. The captured footage of the convoy remained one of the most watched broadcasts in Dominion space for months. Citizens laughed at the slow-motion collapse of human shields, the way their ships had been effortlessly disabled. Yet no one asked why, after such humiliation, humanity had not even lodged an official protest. The Dominion Council took this as proof that the lesson had been learned. They did not realize that the humans were watching, remembering, and preparing. The truth was that in the deep command centers far from public eyes, the incident had been marked as an act of war. Not a spontaneous border clash, not an unfortunate misunderstanding, but a deliberate assault on sovereign vessels. There would be no immediate retaliation. That was not humanity's way. History had taught them the value of patience, of making sure when the hammer fell, it fell hard enough to end the threat permanently. For now, the Dominion celebrated. Their commanders boasted of their victory in public gatherings, confident that the humans had been put in their place. The veterans among them knew better than to trust a quiet enemy, but their voices were too few and too easily ignored. In the silence that followed the incident, the Dominion thought they had closed the matter. They had not closed it. They had opened something they would spend the rest of their days regretting. The humans had been underestimated before, and every time history recorded the same outcome, those who mocked their resolve found themselves staring into the abyss they had helped create. This time would be no different, except the abyss would not just stare back. It would advance. And when it did, it would not stop until the price was paid in full. The galaxy's attention drifted after the public spectacle faded from the news cycle, but within human command networks the incident remained the highest priority. There was no appetite for bluster or empty threats. Every discussion was focused on gathering every possible detail about the Dominion's capabilities, logistics, and political vulnerabilities. Intelligence analysts traced fleet deployments using intercepted traffic, trade manifests, and the quiet testimonies of civilian captains who had passed through Dominion space. Patterns emerged: refueling stations with predictable schedules, patrol routes that repeated every 72 hours, and supply convoys that traveled without heavy escort once inside supposedly safe territory. The Dominion believed the humans incapable of deep reconnaissance, unaware that Earth's intelligence services had spent decades perfecting their craft on 100 smaller stages. Long before the first human warship had launched, there had been satellites, covert operatives, and electronic warfare programs designed to thrive under conditions where a single transmission could compromise an entire operation. Now, those tools were being recalibrated for a larger, far more dangerous adversary. From hidden installations in asteroid belts and deep space stations masked by civilian traffic, covert teams monitored Dominion comm channels. Encryption was formidable, but humans had always excelled at solving puzzles, and Dominion security officers began noticing subtle anomalies. Messages arriving slightly out of sequence, data packets that appeared intact but had been invisibly duplicated. These went unreported up the chain, dismissed as harmless technical noise. In reality, the humans were building a live map of Dominion operations accurate to the hour. Commanders in Earth's Defense Council stressed restraint. Every intercepted opportunity to strike was passed over in favor of building a broader picture. The fleet was being repositioned in a way that looked accidental to outside observers. Redeployments masked as joint exercises, reserve squadrons moved to maintenance, docks near strategic jump points, long-range carriers quietly resupplied in hidden orbits. In public, the humans maintained their image as cautious traders and explorers, even reducing visible military traffic to suggest lowered readiness. While military preparations advanced, other arms of human strategy began targeting the Dominion stability in ways that could not be traced back. Trade partners quietly shifted routes to bypass Dominion space, citing economic efficiency, while draining revenue from key sectors. Independent freight captains, paid in untraceable credits, began declining Dominion contracts. In French colonies, whispers circulated that the humans had not truly accepted their humiliation, though no one could point to direct proof. Inside Dominion territory, unexplained incidents accumulated: minor navigation arrays going dark for hours, power relays failing in synchronized patterns, small cargo haulers disappearing without distress calls. To the Dominion leadership, these were the random disruptions of a vast empire, inevitable and meaningless. But for those few who noticed the pattern, a realization took shape: someone was probing their defenses, not to damage them outright, but to learn how they responded under stress. The old Dominion veteran grew more uneasy with each report. He recognized the restraint in the pattern, the discipline it took to hold back when opportunities for revenge were plentiful. It was the kind of patience seen only in those preparing for a decisive, crushing blow. Yet his superiors brushed him aside, unwilling to see the threat behind the calm. To them, humans were still a species of idealistic negotiators who might talk loudly but acted softly. In human war rooms, the opposite belief prevailed. The Dominion had crossed a line from which there could be no retreat. The only question was timing, when to act so that the retaliation was both devastating and impossible to recover from. Fleet captains were briefed on operational doctrines emphasizing rapid disruption of command structures, targeted elimination of critical infrastructure, and psychological pressure on the enemy's chain of command. Every maneuver was designed not only to win, but to ensure the Dominion understood exactly why they were losing. Engineers worked through endless nights refining stealth drive calibrations and weapons synchronization algorithms. Cyber warfare units rehearsed infiltration of Dominion control systems, preparing to turn their own fleets against them in the opening hours of the counterstrike. Intelligence handlers coordinated with long-placed assets inside neutral ports, instructing them to be ready for sudden, coordinated action when the order came. The silence that the galaxy interpreted as fear was, in truth, the hum of vast machinery coming to life in the shadows. Nothing was broadcast. No declarations were made. There would be no public countdown or showy mobilization. The humans had chosen a path of quiet preparation, because when the first move came, it would already be too late for the Dominion to respond. The veteran's last warning to his commanders went unheeded. He told them there was something unnatural about prey that allowed the predator to taste blood yet did not run. They laughed, confident in their fleets and their history of victories. They did not see that history had one glaring omission: none of their past prey had been human. The opening strike came without a declaration, without the theatrical build-up the Dominion had come to expect from its adversaries. A series of Dominion relay stations along the fringe of their border went offline in perfect sequence, cutting communication between forward patrols and central command. At first, technicians assumed a solar flare or meteor activity had caused the outages, but the diagnostic data told another story. Systems had been deliberately shut down from within, command codes used that should have been impossible for outsiders to possess. While the Dominion scrambled to restore its networks, a merchant convoy bound for one of their core supply hubs vanished without a trace. Hours later, a fragment of its hull was found drifting through an asteroid belt hundreds of light years off its planned course. There were no distress calls, no survivors, and no signs of conventional attack. The precision of the disappearance unsettled even those who dismissed humanity as a minor threat. In rapid succession, 3 Dominion listening posts went dark. None reported incoming hostiles. Their systems simply ceased functioning, their automated beacons falling silent. When inspection crews arrived, they found the stations intact but stripped of every encryption module, data core, and navigation record. Whoever had struck had taken only the components that mattered, leaving the structures otherwise untouched, a calculated theft that suggested a purpose far beyond simple harassment. The Dominion's high command attempted to downplay the incidents, but unease began to spread through its fleets. Captains received no new orders for days at a time, convoys altered routes without explanation, and rumors circulated of an invisible enemy dismantling their infrastructure piece by piece. Officially, the Dominion claimed the problems were the work of pirates emboldened by the neutral zones. Unofficially, senior officers began asking themselves a question none dared voice: had humanity already infiltrated their borders? When the first direct clash finally came, it was nothing like the Dominion had prepared for. A patrol squadron on routine escort duty detected faint readings consistent with a cloaked vessel. Before they could lock weapons, their targeting arrays went haywire, cycling through phantom contacts and blinding the ship's gunnery crews. The next instant, precision railgun fire tore through the lead destroyer's bridge, decapitating its command in a single shot. The remaining ships attempted to regroup, but their engines stalled as every system simultaneously flooded with falsified commands. In under 7 minutes, the squadron was destroyed, and none of the attackers appeared on any recorded sensors. Analysis of the wreckage revealed the terrifying truth: the weapons used were far beyond the specifications Dominion intelligence had attributed to human forces. The projectiles had been accelerated to velocities that should have been impossible for the known models of human railguns. Shields designed to withstand hours of sustained bombardment had failed instantly. This was not a probing strike, it was a demonstration. Every Dominion fleet officer who examined the data understood that their opponent had chosen this engagement to send a message, one of capability and intent. There was no demand for surrender, no broadcast of terms. Just silence, followed by the knowledge that somewhere out there, human ships could appear, destroy, and vanish without leaving a trace. The veteran officer, now deeply troubled, reviewed the reports in private. The pattern was undeniable. The humans were not attacking in mass fleets or brute force formations. They were dismantling the Dominion's reach one precise cut at a time. They had bypassed the expected sequence of skirmish, escalation, and decisive battle, and instead were reshaping the entire conflict to their advantage before the Dominion could even identify the battlefield. Still, the Dominion's pride would not allow for a defensive posture. High Command ordered a full war fleet toward human space, determined to crush what they still called a minor rebellion before it could spread. Their armada advanced through known jump corridors, confident their superior numbers would overwhelm any resistance. What they found instead were empty defense lines, space that appeared abandoned, and systems that read as uninhabited. Complacency returned for a brief, fatal moment, until the first wave of hidden artillery batteries activated. Orbital platforms buried within asteroid fields opened fire, drones emerged from debris clouds, and precision strikes ripped into the fleet's forward elements before they even had a chance to form combat formations. The Dominion's tight battle discipline began to unravel. Ships collided while trying to evade incoming fire they couldn't track, comm channels were overwhelmed with fragmented distress calls, and key command ships were destroyed in the opening minutes. The humans didn't press for annihilation. They withdrew just as quickly as they had appeared, leaving the battered survivors drifting, communications severed, and supply lines compromised. For the first time, Dominion crews spoke openly of fear, not the fear of defeat, but the fear of an enemy they could neither see nor anticipate. The veteran officer knew that what they had just experienced was not the humans' full strength. It was only their way of knocking on the door before they came inside. Dominion leadership convened an emergency session, their confidence eroded by the growing list of losses they could not explain. Supply chains that had functioned flawlessly for generations were collapsing. Entire sectors found themselves without fuel shipments, munition stockpiles ran dry, and replacement parts for capital ships simply never arrived. Civilian unrest began in the outer colonies, where food shortages and communication blackouts bred panic. What unsettled the military most was the precision. Nothing about the disruption was random. Every strike hit where it would cause maximum logistical and psychological damage. In the fleets, morale deteriorated. Crews whispered about human broadcasts intercepted on fringe frequencies, short, untraceable transmissions that cut through static. The messages were always the same, a calm voice stating that the Dominion had brought this on itself, followed by coordinates of recent losses, as if the humans were reminding them of their failures. The effect was corrosive. Soldiers began questioning their orders, some refusing to advance into sectors where human activity had been reported. The Dominion attempted to counter with propaganda, declaring each setback exaggerated or fabricated. But the truth was harder to bury when returning ships arrived scorched and crippled, or not at all. The pattern of destruction was tightening, as if invisible nooses were being drawn around their most vital worlds. The humans had yet to deploy their main force, and still the Dominion was struggling to keep its borders intact. High Command's solution was to mass their surviving fleets into a single overwhelming force, hoping sheer scale would deter further attacks. The veteran officer argued against this, warning that concentrating assets would only present the humans with one decisive target. His counsel was ignored. Pride demanded an answer that could be displayed to their citizens, proof that the Dominion still commanded fear. Orders went out for the Grand Armada to prepare for a direct incursion into human territory. Before the fleet could depart, the Dominion's internal networks began to fail. Navigation archives were corrupted, command relays looped false orders, and automated defense grids turned inward, locking their own ships out of protected zones. Analysts traced the chaos to a series of cascading intrusions, sophisticated cyber warfare that bypassed firewalls and encryption protocols thought impenetrable. The humans were no longer just attacking from the outside, they were inside the Dominion's infrastructure, rewriting its operations in real time. The scale of the breach forced Dominion planners to split their attention, leaving the massive fleet stalled while technicians scrambled to restore basic coordination. That delay was costly. In the outer systems, human forces began coordinated strikes on strategic shipyards, removing the possibility of rapid reinforcement. The attacks were swift and surgical, targeting reactors, docking clamps, and fabrication lines, crippling facilities without unnecessary collateral damage. It was a message: this was not random destruction, but a dismantling of the Dominion's war-making ability. Civilian panic escalated into riots on several worlds when human transmissions began broadcasting in public channels. They named the Dominion's war crimes, replaying the humiliation of the captured human convoy, and promising that retribution would not stop until the architects of that act were brought to justice. The calm, measured delivery of these messages unnerved even those in power. There were no shouted threats, no promises of mercy, just certainty. When reconnaissance finally reported the approach of the human main fleet, it was far larger than Dominion intelligence had ever believed possible. Carrier groups, dreadnoughts, stealth frigates, and automated war platforms advanced in disciplined formations, their drive signatures masked until the moment they entered striking range. Tactical simulations run by Dominion analysts returned grim predictions: engagement would almost certainly result in catastrophic loss. The veteran officer, reviewing the incoming data, understood the depth of the mistake. The humans had used every preceding strike to shape the battlefield, to bleed the Dominion's resources, and to strip away the illusion of control. Now the decisive blow was coming, and there was nothing left in reserve to stop it. The fleet that had once been feared across the Orion corridor was now bracing for survival, while their enemy closed in with the precision of a surgeon preparing the final cut. In that moment, the realization spread through the Dominion's upper command: they had not been fighting a war in the conventional sense. They had been dismantled step by step, both materially and psychologically, by an opponent who had never once fought on the terms the Dominion expected. The humans were not seeking a battle, they were ensuring there would be no one left to fight back when the real strike began. The Dominion's armada assembled in a defensive formation around its last fortified sector, every surviving warship pulled from distant patrols and reserve fleets. Commanders told themselves that numbers would compensate for the months of losses, that even a determined human assault could be blunted by sheer volume of fire. Beneath the bravado, there was no mistaking the unease. Crews double-checked systems, engineers worked through final repairs, and every eye turned to the void, waiting for the inevitable. The first sign came as a ripple through long-range sensors, multiple signatures emerging simultaneously across the sector's perimeter. Within moments, the readings multiplied, not in chaotic bursts, but in exacting symmetry. The human fleet had arrived in disciplined formations, the kind seen only from forces that had trained for years for a single engagement. There were no warning hails, no ultimatums. The silence was heavier than any threat. The Dominion opened fire first, their defensive grid saturating space with energy blasts, missile volleys, and kinetic barrages. The humans did not meet the assault head-on. Flanking squadrons broke formation and threaded through the fire, using precision maneuvers that placed them in the blind arcs of Dominion capital ships. Return fire came in concentrated bursts, each volley crippling or outright destroying a target vessel. Where Dominion shields could normally endure hours of punishment, they now collapsed in seconds under the humans' optimized weaponry. Command vessels became primary targets. Once their bridges were destroyed, the remaining ships and their groups lost coordination, devolving into scattered, panicked maneuvers. The human fleet exploited every weakness with mechanical efficiency, isolating clusters of ships and dismantling them before moving to the next. Dominion fighters were unleashed in desperation, only to find themselves engaged by autonomous drones that outpaced and outmaneuvered them, cutting down entire wings before they could reach the main fleet. In the middle of the slaughter, a transmission cut through Dominion channels. It was brief, spoken in a level tone that carried more weight than any shouted threat. You should have let our people go. There was no follow-up. No list of demands. Just the reminder of the spark that had ignited everything. Moments later, the largest Dominion command ship vanished in a blinding flash as a precision strike detonated its core. The battle turned from combat to collapse. Fleet formations disintegrated, survivors attempting to flee only to find exit vectors blocked by human detachments already waiting. Escape routes had been calculated and intercepted before the battle began. For every ship that broke through the blockade, 3 more were destroyed. The Dominion's defensive line, once unshakable, crumbled into pockets of resistance that were methodically erased. Hours later, the sector fell silent. Wreckage drifted in every direction, the faint glimmer of burning hulls marking the graves of vessels that had once been the pride of the Dominion. The humans did not linger to celebrate. They withdrew with the same precision with which they had arrived, leaving behind only the survivors they chose to let live. Among them was the veteran officer, plucked from his crippled ship and released with his escape pod intact. No explanation was given, but he understood. His survival was not an act of mercy, it was a deliberate message. When rescue crews found him, he carried a single warning to the Dominion Council. The humans had not merely defeated their fleet, they had dismantled the foundation of their power. Every shipyard, every fuel depot, every supply corridor essential to rebuilding had already been marked or destroyed. Even if the will to retaliate remained, the means no longer existed. Word of the defeat spread faster than any official statement. Across the galaxy, the legend took shape: the fleet that struck without warning, fought without hesitation, and left nothing standing. In markets, in ports, in hidden dens of smugglers, the phrase became common: never provoke Earth. The Dominion's subjects began to question their masters, whispering that perhaps the old empire had finally met an enemy it could not break. For humanity, the operation was complete. They did not seek occupation or tribute. They sought a single outcome: that no one would ever again mistake restraint for weakness. The captured convoy, the public humiliation, the months of careful preparation, they had all led to this moment. The price had been paid in full, and in the quiet that followed, the galaxy understood that the human silence before the storm had been the loudest warning of all.